Good morning. This is Dean Tenney, and I'm going to present for you the first in a series of three lectures on options. This first lecture is an introduction to options, followed by four of the basic option strategies that you're held accountable for on both the SIE and the Series 7 top ops. So this lecture is appropriate to both candidates. We'll go over the four speculative transactions. Speculative meaning you may end up with a stock, but you don't start with a stock. You're just betting on the volatility of the stock, the movement of the stock. For example, you're either buying or selling upward volatility or directional volatility movement. In a long call, you're buying upward volatility. In a short call, you're selling that volatility. In a long put, you're buying downward volatility or movement. In a short put, you're selling it. So we'll go over those four basics. The second lecture in this series is on stock positions plus option positions. And that too is relevant for both SIE candidates and Series 7 candidates, where somebody has a stock position and they come to the options market to either lay off risk or generate additional income, hedges, so to speak. That's the second lecture, and that lecture is appropriate for both parties as well. And the third and final lecture is only appropriate to Series 7 top-off candidates. And that's on multiple option strategies, straddles, and spreads. And so if you're an SIE candidate, you can skip that one because you're not held accountable or not testable on multiple option strategies. Okay, so let's get started. Let's get started in the first of this series of three lectures. Welcome to the Zoom classroom. Welcome to my studio here in fabulous Las Vegas. I think a lot of candidates get hung up because they think there's a zillion things going on, and there's really not. I mean, contracts exist outside of the securities industry. Option contracts and contracts exist outside the securities industry. Contracts always have two parties, somebody who pays the consideration and somebody who receives the consideration. Usually consideration is money. My insurance policy is a two-party contract. I pay the premium, and my insurance company receives the premium, and therefore they're obligated. They have written a contract with me that says, Dean, if you pay us this premium and something happens, we'll be obliged to make good. If they didn't want to do that, they shouldn't have collected the premium. An analogy outside the securities industry before we get started. I wanted to buy this car on a when issued basis. This car did not exist at the time. I went to the car dealer and I said, listen, I'd like to give you $3,000. The car dealer said, what's the catch? People don't give you money unless there's some kind of catch. I said, for this $3,000, I want you this premium. I want you to stand willing to sell to me the first one of those cars off the boat from Japan for 25 grand. He said, well, Dean, the manufacturer suggested retail price is 25. I said, well, I thought you would be willing to sell that to me for $24,000, I wouldn't be offering you $3 right now. And if that's the case, I'm not going to exercise a contract to buy a car at 25 that I could buy at 24. I just would choose to, buy it at 24. We'll have wasted my $3,000 and you get to keep it. He said, well, okay. Do I want something in written form for him? I absolutely do. I, car dealer, agree to sell said vehicle for 25 grand in consideration of the premium, right? He's obliged to do that. Anyways, several weeks later, he called me and he said, hey, Dean, the first boat, the car here is off the boat from Japan. He's in Long Beach. I'm in San Francisco at the time. And he says, hey, when you get here, I want to talk to you. I said, well, I'm on my way. When I got down to the dealership there in Long Beach, he said, Dean, it just came off the truck and I had an offer for 32. How about I give you 5 grand to go away? I said, well, listen, you must think I'm new. Why would I take 5 grand to walk away from a choice to buy a car at 25 that you just told me is worth 32? I mean, the contract I'm holding, a choice to buy at 25, a car at 32 is worth 7 grand. $1,000. If I were going to walk, I'd want at least the $7,000. At least. I'd also want some extra for my time. There's some time value wrapped up in this thing. But unfortunately for you, Mr. Car Dealer, I want to exercise my contract. So I exercised. I bought the car at 25. I paid 3 to do so. So I'm out 28. So as long as that car is worth 28, life is good. Now, in our time together in this lecture, the underlying interest isn't going to be an automobile. It's going to be a stock, but very similar process. No, I was getting to lease, thinking of leasing a high-end automobile. And the car dealer told me that at the end of the lease, the car is going to be worth $60,000. I said, really? You know, you and I have opposite expectations of the value of the car at the end of the lease. You say it's going to be 60 or higher, and I say less than 60. You know, anytime two parties have opposite expectations, we can structure a bet. I said to the car dealer, how about I give you $4,000? He says, what's the catch? Again, people don't give you money unless there's some kind of catch. I said, for this $4,000, I want to have a choice to sell or put the car to you at the end of the lease for $60,000. If you're correct and it's, 60 or higher, I'm not going to stick it to you at 60 or put the car to you at 60. Sell at 60. If I can sell the car on the auto trader at 70 or 75, I would just choose to let that contract expire and I would sell the car elsewhere. Then on the other hand, if it's less than 60, I'm going to make you perform on the contract. Now, this particular car dealer, I couldn't get him to go for it, but let's suppose I could have. Would I want something in written form from him? I absolutely would. I, car dealer, agree to buy said vehicle for $60,000 at the end of the lease for $4,000. I would want something in written form from him. Let's say at the end of the lease, he says, I wonder if Dean's going to show up. The car's worth 40. And he says, it's car's at 40 grand. That's the worth at the end of the lease. I wonder if Dean's going to show up here today and make me buy this car at 60. The answer is absolutely yes. He says, you're going to make me pay 60 for a car that's only worth 40? I go, absolutely. He says, I'm down 20 grand. I said, well, no. Remember, you get to keep the 4. You're only down 16. You're not actually down 20. Man, you're so good at my loss. I said, well, the reason I'm so good at his loss is because it's my reward. Now, again, that's an example of a put contract. Now, again, in our time in this lecture, the underlying interest is going to be an automobile. It's going to be a stock. Now, one thing I suggest you do, our time together is a buffet. If you don't like something, don't put it on your tray. But if you like something, put it on your tray. And as I mentioned, I think a lot of people get hung up because they think there's a zillion types of contracts, and there's not. There's only 2 types of contracts, calls and puts. So I would take a sheet of paper, fold it in half. You can either buy or sell them. And that means we have 4 basic option positions. 4 basic option positions. What I'm suggesting is you might want to design an options matrix, not a box with 4 squares, an options matrix. In an options matrix, every square is somehow relevant to the other square. So here's an example of an options matrix. So I walked you through 2 types of contracts. The analogy I walked you through an analogy of a call and a put contract with 2 parties where the underlying interest was an automobile. I went long a call. The only 2 positions you can have at a broker term are long and short. Long means you're holding something. It's kind of like learning a foreign language. And this lecture will go over that foreign language. But these are our 4 basic positions. In that analogy with the car, I paid the dealer a premium. As I mentioned in our lecture this morning, the underlying interest is an automobile. I had a choice to buy the car at 25. In our morning here, we're going to have a choice to buy the stock at the strike price. XP means strike price. And at some point this morning, we'll go over the max gain. We already know the max loss is the premium, right? The worst case is I paid 3 grand and it doesn't make any economic sense and you lose 3 grand. So, anytime you buy an option position, the worst case, you lose your premium. Pretty easy to qualify somebody on that. Again, we haven't done anything here. We're just laying out the groundwork before we start playing. And I'm suggesting that one useful tool might be a matrix. So once we get through the introduction to the option contracts, the nomenclature, the vocabulary, we'll go through these 4 basic positions. We had a short call. My example, the car dealer, he had received the premium. He's obligated to sell the stock at the strike price. And anytime that you receive money, the best case is you agree to be a potential victim. That's the way I think about it. What Dean thinks about it isn't testable, but the way I think about it is I agree to be a potential victim. Nobody victimizes me. Nobody makes me perform on the contract, and I walk with the money. I go neener. Right? The best case for my car dealer was that I didn't exercise the contract and he got to keep the 3 grand. And so that was a call contract. The car dealer had an obligation to sell the car at 25. Now, in our time together in this lecture, it's going to be an obligation to sell the stock at the strike price. And we said a lot of people think there's a zillion things going on. There's not. There's 2 types of contracts, calls and puts. You can either buy them or sell them. In my analogy with the car dealer, I went long a put. Long a put. I'm the owner, the holder, the buyer. We'll go over all that at length in just a little bit. Anyways, I had paid a premium. and I had a choice to sell the car at 60, the strike price. XP, looks like I don't have that here in my slide. So let's go ahead and get that up there for you. At the strike price. Ooh. And at the XP means strike price. So choice to sell the stock at the strike price. We'll talk about the max gain later, but anytime you buy an option contract, the worst case is that you're going to lose your premium. So if you're going to be buying options in terms of suitability, is this money you can afford to lose? So in my example, the put, I paid $4,000. Worst case is makes no economic sense to stick the automobile, put the automobile, sell the automobile at 60. If the car is 70, 75, we'll go over that at length. Now we're going to have putters. We got to have put-ees. So every contract has two parties. And in my example, the analogy with the car dealer, he received the premium. He was obligated to buy the car at the strike price. In this case, the stock is the underlying interest. And the best case is you agree to be a potential victim and nobody victimizes you. So those are our four basic positions we'll be discussing. And I just gave you an analogy to kind of do that. I suggested you might want to make yourself a matrix. By the way, it's not a box with four squares. I mean, every quadrant is somehow related to another quadrant here. So, again, we'll talk about that at length. We'll talk about that at length. All right, so let's clean up the slide here. We have two types of contracts. As I told you, I think that's where a lot of people get hung up. They think there's a zillion things going on. There's not. There's two types of option contracts, calls and puts. And you can either go long or short. And so you have four basic positions that we'll be discussing in this lecture. So we said there's two types of contracts. So those contracts are going to have two parties. Somebody who's long, who's paid the premium and either has a choice to call the stock away, a choice to buy the stock, or has a choice to put the stock, depending on what type of contract it is, a choice to sell, depending on what type of contract it is. So you either have a choice to buy the stock if it's a call contract, or you have a choice to sell if it's a put contract. Now, again, it's like learning a foreign language. On your exam, what are they going to say on the test? Are they going to say that the customer is long, the customer is the buyer, the customer is the owner, the holder? They're going to say whatever you're not prepared for. And so very important on your exam that when you hear the word long, buyer, owner, holder, that you can get to a choice. That's the one thing they're not going to say on your exam, is the customer has a choice. Now, some people, as I mentioned in our time together, it's a buffet, and if you don't like something, then put it on your tray. Some people like to use the word right instead of choice. I backstage like to use the word choice because, that's what options are, choices. And I also don't like using the word RIGHT, which sounds exactly like WRITE, and they're exact opposite things. And so I'll be using the word choice. Now, again, that doesn't ultimately matter whether you choose to use the word right or choice, because on the test, they're not going to say a customer has a right or choice. That's what you've got to bring to the table. What they're going to say on the test is the customer's long, buyer, owner, holder, and you got to get to a choice. Now, types of orders is very testable as well. And the way you establish a long position in an option or in the stock for that matter is due to an opening purchase. Now, in our time together, when I put a TQ next to something, that doesn't mean that verbatim that's a test question. TQ means test question. But it means that I can't imagine a drawing where this testable content in some fashion doesn't show up. And so I would be prepared for an A, B, C, D kind of a question. And they say, which of the following orders are used to establish or add to a long position? And you would say an opening purchase, an opening purchase. So we said every contract has two parties. So we also have that somebody's going to be long, somebody's going to be short. And you have received the premium. You're a potential victim. You either have an obligation to sell the stock, let somebody call the stock away from you if it's short call contract, or you have an obligation to buy the stock if it's a short put contract. Again, it's like learning a foreign language. And they say when you dream of foreign language, that's when you know the foreign language. So I guess when you have your first options dream, that's perhaps, a sign that you're getting there. The way I think of it is inch by inch, options are a cinch, yard by yard, options are hard. Now, again, there's a lot of words that mean short. What might they say on the test? They might say short, seller, writer, whatever you're not prepared for. And the number one thing you've got to be able to do is when you see that phraseology on your exam, short, seller, writers, go, okay, potential victim, they have an obligation. They either have an obligation to let somebody call the stock away or an obligation to let somebody put the stock to them to buy the stock, depending on what type of contract it is. As we said, there's two types of contracts, calls and puts. Two types of contracts, calls and puts. You can either buy them or sell them. So we have 4 basic option positions. Again, types of orders are important on the exam. Types of orders. And again, I would imagine you might see an answer set. You might see an answer set. It says, which of the following orders would be used to establish or add to a short position? Now, in this lecture, we're talking about options, but it would be no different if we were talking about stocks, because in stocks, you also have long and short stock positions. We're talking about options, but if you want to go long an option, a call or put, or you want to go long the stock, you're going to do an opening purchase. That's the technical phraseology for, the boxes you're going to check. And if you're going to go short an option, call or put, or short the stock, you're going to do an opening sale. And so they, give you this as an A, B, C, D, and they say, which of the following orders would be used to establish or add to a long position? Opening purchase. But add to means if you have 5 contracts, you can add another 5 to it for a total of 10. Or if you have 500 shares, you can buy another 500 shares for a total of 1,000, right? Mr. Buffett owns 1 billion shares of Bank of America. 700 million shares he got in the primary transaction from Bank of America, 300 million in the secondary market. So that's an opening purchase, right? He's been doing opening purchases of another 5 million, another 10 million, whatever the case may be. And an opening sale is used to go short. If they say, which of the following would be used to establish or add to a short position, you would say an opening sale. All right, so we're going to start by talking about a call contract, and we're going to talk about a put contract. And we said there's 2 parties to the call contract. There's 2 parties always to a contract, somebody who's paid the premium and somebody who's received the premium. And so the 2 parties to a call contract are a party that has a choice to buy the stock at the strike price because they paid the premium. And the other party to the call contract is the person who's obliged to sell the stock at the strike price. So they don't want to do that. They shouldn't have collected the premium. So that's the 2 parties to a call contract. We said there are 2 types of contracts, calls and puts. You can either buy them or sell them. And so we have 4 basic positions. The 2 parties to the put contract. There's somebody who's long the put. I don't know if it's helpful to tell you what most people get hung up on. I'm not worried when people are confused in some way. I've seen people get confused before about. I'm more worried about when people are confused in some way. I've never seen somebody confused. That being said, the puts are usually the ones that throw people for a loop. It's okay. Somebody says, I don't get it. I buy it to sell it. Those are different hits. When you buy a put contract, paid a premium, you have a choice to sell the stock. So whether you want to have a choice to buy the stock or a choice to sell the stock, choices cost money. You got to pay a premium. You want a choice to buy the stock, that's a call contract. And if you want a choice to sell the stock, that's a put contract. And the way I think about it, again, the way Dean thinks about it is not testable, but the way I think about it is we're going to have putters. We're going to have put-ees. I apologize. It looks like my annotation tools acted up a little bit this morning, but so putters and put-ees. If you didn't want to have to buy the stock, you shouldn't have collected the premium. That's what obliges you to perform on the contract. And again, here's our 2 types of contracts with 2 parties. And so we have 4 basic option positions we'll be discussing in this morning's lecture. But before we play the game, we haven't played the game yet. We haven't done any test questions whatsoever. It's kind of like playing a game of any kind, like chess, for example. Before we do that, we got to kind of talk about how the pieces move around the board, some of the nomenclature, some of the terminology. How does that all work? And so that's what we're going to do first. But these are our 4 basic positions. By the way, all of our other positions build from these 4 basics. The vast majority of the questions you receive are about the 4 basic positions. So for you Series 7 candidates, it doesn't do you good to try and learn straddles and spreads until you're really solid on the basics, for example. All right, we're into our first slide now that has some potential test questions for you. So it's nice that option contracts are standardized. It's nice that option contracts are standardized because that makes it easier for people to play. And we're all about making it easier for people to play. I'm coming to you from Las Vegas. And one reason you might want to gamble in Las Vegas is because we have a gaming commission. And you know that the games here in Vegas are standardized. There's a gaming commission. If you win the bet, somebody's going to be able to collect on the bet. And so options look alike. We're going to be looking at an Apple December 115 call, but it wouldn't matter if I flopped in there XYZ or Netflix or Facebook, it wouldn't matter. Each of the option contracts governs 100 shares, and that's called the multiplier. The multiplier. Now when we start actually doing some trades here, doing some working models of these strategies, I would recommend you do things on a per share basis. And then when you're all done, say, okay, how many contracts are we discussing? And so we're looking at here, one contract, which means we're talking about 100 shares. 100 shares. Apple is the underlying interest, the thing we're betting on. The thing we're betting on. I got a horse right here. His name is Paul Revere. Can do. That's not a song about a guy who owns a horse. It's a song about a guy who's making a bet on a horse. And you don't need to own the horse to bet on the horse. You don't need to own Apple to make a bet on Apple. Right? So people who own Apple stock are entirely different than people who are trading options on Apple. We also have non-equity options. We can make a buy and sell options on indexes and foreign currencies and other things. Our first potential test question. When do options expire? So we're looking at an Apple December. So this contract expires at 11:59 Eastern time on the third Friday, the expiry month. And that means in December here, the third Friday in December. 115 is the strike or the exercise price. And we said there's 2 types of contracts, calls and puts. I wouldn't worry too much about this, but, people who trade options call this an option leg. But the technical name for this is a series. That's the type, call or put, plus the stock, Apple, plus the expiration and the strike, that's called the series. And the series is the most complete description of an option contract. Now, so if I ask you, you say, Dean, I'm interested in options. I say, well, what type of option contracts are you interested in? And you say, well, how many are there? We're not off to a good start if you don't know that there's 2 types. So, this also helps us qualify you. You say, Dean, I'm interested in call contracts. I say, what class are you interested in? You say, I'm interested in Apple calls. That's an incomplete description because there's all kinds of Apple calls. I say, what month? You say, Dean, I'm interested in Apple December calls. I said, well, even with the Apple December calls, there's lots of those. Which strike are you interested in? You say, Dean, I'm interested in an Apple December 115 call. That is a complete description of the option contract. I say, let me pull up a quote on that. Let's see what the premium you would pay or receive is for one Apple December 115 call. So that's a complete description of the option contract. So option contracts, again, we're not talking about the players. We're not talking about people who are bought or sold options. We're talking about the Apple 115 call. That Apple 115 call contract is either in the money or has intrinsic value. It's at the money, it's out of the money. And what we're talking about is the relationship of the market price of the stock to the strike price. Remember, XP is notation for the strike price. That's the relationship we're looking at. The relationship of the market price to the strike price. The relationship of the strike price to the market price. That's the relationship we're going to be discussing. By the way, this one is more important from a test-taking perspective, and I'll tell you why as we progress. So in the money or options that have intrinsic value are more of a test issue than options that are not in the money or don't have intrinsic value. All right, so let's look at this relationship called intrinsic value in the money for a call contract. So in intrinsic value, let me get my picture of myself out of the way here. Intrinsic value in the money in call contracts when the market price of the stock is above the strike price of the call contract. Two great mnemonics for us in terms of this relationship. And those two great mnemonics are call up. If you only remember one thing about options, please remember call up. Call contracts have intrinsic value when the market price is up from the strike price. Call up. And we're going to find out later that break-evens in call contracts is going to be strike price plus premium. So that's a great mnemonic. Now, the other way you can answer this relationship is with what I call a framing question. A question I ask myself: is the contract likely to be exercised? Is it likely somebody wants to buy Apple at 115 when Apple's at 117? The answer is yes. Call up. The strike price is up from the market price. Now, we're not talking about whether you're going to make money or lose money. That's not what we're asking. We're just asking, what is the relationship of the strike price to the market price? So here, the 115 call has 2 points of intrinsic value. So two ways to proceed. Call up. Is the contract likely to be exercised? Now, the reason that's going to be important is because where we're heading is there going to be two components of a premium that you would pay or receive. And those two components are going to be the intrinsic value and the time value. Well, as I mentioned, if you're going to only remember one thing, call up is a good one. Put down at the money. At the money is when the market price and the strike price are the same. The market price and the strike price are the same. So here, the market price and the strike price are the same. That's at the money. Again, not as important as in the money or intrinsic value, but that's that relationship. Out of the money. There's no such thing as negative intrinsic value. The contract either has it or it doesn't. Remember, we said there's two ways to proceed here. One way to proceed is call up. Is the contract likely to be exercised? It's not likely somebody wants to buy Apple at 115, call Apple away at 115 when Apple is at 115 or 112. This contract's out of the money because the market price is up from the strike price. There's no such thing as negative intrinsic value. The contract either has it or it does not. So of these relationships, the most important one is this relationship of intrinsic value. So here's a nice example. I don't know if it's helpful, but I like to think of as options about floors and ceilings. And so I like to think of this Apple call at 115, there's a floor. Now, when we're looking at Apple at 112, there was no intrinsic value. There's a floor there. The contract would just expire worthless. Be careful. Is that good news or bad news? You can't tell me that. You have to say, well, Dean, it depends. Was I long the 115 call? Was I short the 115 call? All you can tell me is that a 115 call with the stock at 112 has no intrinsic value. We said a great mnemonic is call up. Call up. Now, we said here again, another way you can do this, now we were looking at 117, is you can compare the market price to the strike price. And you say, okay, that has 2 points of intrinsic value. Let's just look at another one here. Let's say that Apple is 131. 131. By the way, how far up could Apple go? Unlimited. So what is the intrinsic value of a 115 call with Apple 131? 16 points. 16 points is, point per share. P.S., who cares right now? I mean, that's neither good news nor bad news. It's just a relationship. By the way, it doesn't matter whether you're long or short. It doesn't matter whether you're long a 115 call or you're short a 115 call. Does not matter. A 115 call on Apple with Apple at 131 has 16 points of intrinsic value. Has 16 points of intrinsic value. All right, so it's the opposite relationship for a put. The opposite relationship for a put. If you only remember one thing about this morning lecture, please remember call up, put down. Call up, put down. Call up, call up. If the market price is up from the strike price, the contract has intrinsic value. Put down, put down. If the market price is down from the strike price, the contract has intrinsic value. We said another thing you can use is the framing question. Is the contract likely to be exercised? Is the contract likely to be exercised? Now, at some point, if you get good, you should be able to do that from either side of the contract. But usually for people starting out in options, the long perspective is usually easier for them than the short perspective. And so, for what it's worth, maybe you want to start there. But is it likely somebody wants to sell Apple at 115 when the Apple's at 112? The answer is yes. The market price is down from the strike price. The contract has intrinsic value. It has 3 points of intrinsic value. Intrinsic value and in the money are synonymous terms. Means the same thing. To say that a 115 call, a 115 put with Apple at 112 has 3 points of intrinsic value is the same intellectual thing as saying it's in the money by 3 points. Is that good news or bad news? Again, it depends. You can't tell me that unless I tell you long or short or what was the premium. We haven't done any of these positions yet. We're just talking about the nomenclature, the terminology, the vocabulary. Again, in my chess analogy, I got to tell you how the pieces move, what are their values, what's the object of the game before we start actually playing. At the money, I told you the relationship that's most important here for test taking purposes is the intrinsic value. Intrinsic value is the most important because, a lot of times on your test, they say you close out or offset at intrinsic value. So if you don't know what intrinsic value is, you might be fumbling around without a close it out or offset the position, which is where we're heading. Anyways, at the money is when the strike price and the market price are the same. The strike price, XP means strike price, 115. MP means market price. It's just notation. Notation is not on the test. So we said if you only remember one thing about our time together, remember call up and put down. Call up and put down. Here, again, we're looking at the relationship. It is not likely that somebody wants to stick the Apple to somebody at 115 when the Apple's at 117. No. That's not likely. So right now the contract is out of the money. There's no such thing as negative intrinsic value. The contract either has it or it does not. But remember, it's the contract. The players aren't in or out of the money. The contract is in or out of the money. And again, stocks can't go past zero. Let's say Apple's at 117. Again, not testable, but I think of options as being about floors and ceilings. 115 or higher, there's a ceiling. The contract has no intrinsic value. Please note the strike price doesn't change, but what does change is the market price of Apple, right? The market price of Apple goes up and down. Apple is a very volatile stock. Test question, it's a very volatile stock as compared to the market as a whole. Test question has a high beta. Beta is a measurement. Test question, they'll say on your exam question something like a measurement of a stock's volatility as compared to the market as a whole is known as, and you got to come up with beta. So if I said, Apple has a beta of 2, that would mean Apple is twice as volatile as the underlying market. And again, volatility is going to be your friend or your enemy. Not testable, but you buy an option contract, we're going to find out you need movement. Volatility is something you seek. And if you're selling an option, we'll find out that the volatility is something you're not seeking. That's not good. Not going to be good for you. Anyway, so let's say the Apple goes down. It's at 117, and then Apple goes to 112. Again, we're asking about the relationship of that to this. And so now the contract has 3 points of intrinsic value. But remember, it could continue to go down. Maybe Apple goes to, 108. And now this contract would be worth 7 points intrinsically. We said it has intrinsic value when the market price is down from the strike price. Market price is down from the strike price. I'm not being facetious, by the way. Stocks only go to zero, right? You know, your Apple can't go to -5. It can just go to zero. So, you know, on the upside, it can go to unlimited number on the upside, right? How far up can Apple go? There's a finite supply, potential infinite demand. So on the upside, that's going to be infinite. But on the downside, it can only go to zero. All right, well, we're getting closer. We're getting closer to playing. We're getting closer to playing. We said the premium you're ultimately going to pay or receive for an option contract is the intrinsic value plus the time value. Now, for test purposes, I told you that this isn't as important as this. Because, you know, if you're going to trade options at my firm, I'd make you write 1,000 times. Options are a wasting asset. Time value erodes. At expiration, the contract is only worth its intrinsic value. If the contract has no intrinsic value, the contract will expire worthless. If the contract has intrinsic value at expiration, it will be exercised. Let's write that 999 more times and I'll let you trade options. Options are a wasting asset. Time value erodes. So we've talked about this relationship already. I'm not sure how you want to think about it. You know, the way I like to think about it, let me just get out my little text box here. You know, I like to think of it as time value is everything in excess of intrinsic value. That's how I like to think of it. Time value is everything in excess of intrinsic value. So we were looking at an Apple. Again, what I like to do too, what Dean likes to do is not testable. But, you know, when I'm doing, you want to have some kind of process to doing options. And I like to put my, market price either above or below my strike price to make my analysis. And we said to figure out the intrinsic value, we had a mnemonic, call up. Call up. Is the market price up from the strike price? Another thing we said is a framing question. Is the contract likely to be exercised? Is the contract likely to be exercised? And we say, okay, well, the 115 call with Apple at 117 has 2 points of intrinsic value. Now, if we looked at our quote machine and we saw that the premium was 9 points, you say, hey, Dean, I'm looking for a quote on the Apple December 115 call. I said, it's trading at 9. It's trading at 9 points. Do you want to buy, go long or short? You're either going to pay 9 points or you're going to receive 9 points. I say right now, the contract, the 115 calls 2 points of intrinsic value. So the 7 points is the time value. The time value. Again, this time value is going to go bye-bye. So as I mentioned, I wouldn't worry as much about this as I'd worry about this. Because at expiration, it's only going to be worth the intrinsic value. It either has intrinsic value or it does not. Let's look at a Apple. Let's see. Let's look at an Apple. So we looked at an Apple December 115 call. Let's look at an Apple December 110 call. So if we're looking at these two contracts, we just got a quote on the Apple December 115 call. I said, hey, the quote on the Apple December 115 call is 9 points. And he said, Dean, what about the December 110s? I said, well, listen, you haven't told me yet whether you're thinking about going long or short, but a choice to buy at a lower price, a choice to buy at 110 is more desirable than a choice to buy at 115. You know, people who sell them know that and is going to charge you accordingly. So we don't know what the premium is on this one, but we do know it's going to be something greater than 9. You know, lower strike call contracts always have greater premiums. Why? Because a choice to buy at a lower price is always more desirable. People who sell them know that and charge accordingly. So, there's our call contract. We have two types of contracts, calls and put contracts. Here's our Apple December 115 call. Apple is trading at 117. And so again, this contract has no intrinsic value. So again, I think of time value as everything in excess of the intrinsic value. Options are a wasting asset, time value arose. Let's go ahead and put up here. An Apple December 120 put. An Apple December 120 put. Well, listen, a choice to sell at a higher price is always more desirable. In fact, right now we're looking at Apple at 117. The 120 put has 3 points of intrinsic value. So we don't know what that 120 put is. But we do know that whatever it is going to be more than 9. Higher strike put contracts always have greater premiums. A choice to sell at a higher price, is always more desirable. And so we don't know what it is, going to be more than 9. Now, the maximum time value an option can ever have, is less than 12 months, with one exception. So, if we were looking at an Apple February, if I give you till February to be right, it's more likely you're going to be right. So longer term options always have greater premiums as well. But the most you could ever go out at an option is less than 12 months, with one testable exception. And how do we test you on it, or how do we think about that? Is to qualify for a long-term capital gain. To qualify for a long-term capital gain, you have to have held up an investment for more than 12 months. And I just told you that we don't have any option contracts that you could possibly hold for more than 12 months. We said the longer term you'd go out, the more premium you would have to pay. It's beyond where I'm at right now because I haven't shown you the positions. But, when you buy an option, you have to be right about 3 things: direction, how far, and timing. And so, if I'm going to give you more time to be right, I'll take the short perspective. The more time I give you to be right as the buyer, the more premium I'm going to charge you, because the more time I give you, the more likely you're going to be right. When you're long or short the stock, you only have to be right about one thing: direction. And you theoretically have forever to be right? If you buy Apple, the stock, there's no expiration. You just have to be right about one thing: direction. But here, the only option contract that you can possibly qualify for a long-term capital gain is a leap. I would definitely know that. A leap stands for, not testable, a leap stands for long-term appreciation potential securities. The test question is, it's the only one that may qualify for long-term capital gain. In practice, technically, leaps go out to 39 months, but in practice, leaps go out to 30 months, 2.5 years. And so if you want me to agree to be a potential victim for 2.5 years, 30 months, I'm going to want a lot of money for you. We have weekly options, we have 3 months options, 6 months options, and we have leaps. By the way, the only thing that's testable on this slide is this. And the rest of this is more just kind of, trying to intellectually understand options. And we said at some point, this intrinsic value concept becomes testable when it comes to closing out the option. So whenever there's 3 of a thing on your exam, what you can stand by for is the except format. All the following can happen to an option contract except the options events. In my game of chess, if I'm teaching somebody how to play chess, they say, Dean, what are the events in the game of chess? I say the game of chess ends with either checkmate or stalemate. Either one of these kings is dead or both kings live. And you say, well, Dean, is that good news or bad news? I say, well, that's a different thing. You're now asking me what can happen to a player. That can be win, lose, or draw. So be careful on your exam whether they're asking what can happen to an Apple December 115 call contract. The answer to that is that contract can be traded, that contract can be exercised, that contract can expire. I think that's a great mnemonic to remember what can happen to an option contract. It can be traded, it can be exercised, or it can expire. By the way, I would add to that, that mnemonic is also good on the test for rights and warrants. You know, this lecture is about options, but you know, two other derivatives that both SIE candidates and Series 7 candidates are held accountable for are rights and warrants. You know, I'll take a little low budget side tour here. You know, rights are test question exercisable below the current market price and are short term. And warrants test question are long term and exercisable above the current market price. You know, these are issued by the corporation and then they can be traded, they can be exercised, or they can expire. So rights and warrants, like options, can be traded, they can exercise, or they can expire. So we're getting ready to play here. We're getting ready to play. But before you trade options, because you know that's the beginning transaction is an opening transaction, right? And so before you do that, you have to be approved to trade options. And so if you want to do an opening purchase or an opening sale of a option contract, you first have to be approved. And so here's the process for doing so. And this is again on both exams. I would know this in sequential order. So before options contracts being traded, the customer needs to fill out and open an option account. So the first thing is the customer needs to receive what's called the OCC disclosure document, the characteristics and risks of options. This is all the bad things that can happen to you. You know, please note, it's not called the characteristics and risk and rewards of options. It's just the risk. It's 100+ pages. There's no way you can possibly read this while I wait if I'm your broker. So now I'm going to go back to my manager, my register option principal, and say, hey, I'd like you to approve my customer to trade options. He says, Dean, did you give him the, I say, did you give him the OCC disclosure document? You had better say yes. So as your registered option principal, not testable, but that's called a Series 4. That's not testable. As a Series 4, the registered option principal approves the customer. I call back the customer and you say, hey, you've been approved. And so now he can do his initial trade, whether it be an opening purchase to establish the long position or an opening sale to establish the short position. And then I say to the customer, I say, listen, now that you've been approved within 15 days, we need back from you the option agreement. So the 15th day has come and gone. So your broker calls you and say, hey, listen, where's the option agreement? You say, Dean, it's fifth from the bottom. I'm getting to it. But in the meantime, I'm glad you called. I want to buy some Facebook call contracts. I say, no can do. If it's late, the only thing we're going to allow you to do is closing or offsetting transactions. We'll let you get rid of the option positions you have, but we won't allow you to initiate any more opening transactions. This is to give you an incentive to, get this done. I'd be interested if you're watching this on my YouTube channel and not as, an active student. I'd be interested in your thoughts about whether the lectures that I put on the YouTube channel should be done with slides or should be done with a dry erase board. Dry erase board would make it easier for you to take notes as you're watching, assuming you don't have a copy of the slide deck. Anyways, let me know your thoughts. But anyways, the good news about a slide deck, I guess I would just repeat my thought process here. It's easy to kind of, erase it and start over and do it again and, go back and forth. Man, that's assuming I know which version I'm using, whether I'm using the PowerPoint annotation tool or Dean is using the zoomed annotation tool. And again, so I would definitely know this in order. Definitely would know that in order. Sometimes on the exam, what they might do is give you a question where they put it, scramble it and say, what is the proper chronological sequence, A, B, C, or D? And then you got to go through and pick out whether A, B, C, or D, which one has this in the right sequence. So they love those sequential kind of questions. As I mentioned, this is going to be an A, B, C, D question as well, types of orders. So I hinted about offsetting transactions. So we said T, we said the option contract can be traded, the option contract can be exercised, the option contract can expire. And right now we're looking at trading the option. So, if you bought that Apple call for 9, maybe the Apple goes to 131, you close it out. You call your brokers, I'd like to do a closing sale. And what you're hoping to do is buy low and sell high. Or maybe you sold the Apple call. And so you did an opening sale and now you buy it back. Now, ultimately, on both exams, I'd be surprised if you don't encounter this as an answer set. And depending on what they're asking you will depend on the appropriate response. If this is an ABC, A is opening purchase, B is closing sale, C is closing purchase, D is opening sale. If on the exam they say, which of the following types of orders are very testable. Let me, again, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, let me know if you would find it helpful to do a trading lecture. That's the buy stops, sell stops, all that kind of stuff. That's very important as well. But anyways, types of orders, all types of orders are very testable. Anyways, if I ask you on your exam, which of the following will be used to establish or add to a long position, you would say an opening purchase. By the way, it doesn't matter whether it's a long position in the option, which we're discussing now, or a long position in the stock. And both of them are opening purchases. And then they say, which of the following would be used to eliminate or reduce or offset? There's a lot of words that mean the same thing. Boy, I had a young lady as a student. Oh my goodness. She worked so hard, but her primary language was Mandarin. Can you imagine trying to translate this from English to Mandarin and Mandarin back to English? It wasn't even English to begin with, I don't think, to be honest with you. And good news, she passed, but she called me in frustration, said, my Google Translator doesn't even have this word as a potential translatable word. So it doesn't surprise me. So just get, comfortable. There's a lot of ways to say the same thing. And that's why you want to, get comfortable with all those different ways to eliminate, to reduce, or offset a long position. You'd say a closing sale. By the way, that'd be the same for a stock, right? It's just like learning more important that brokers know the vocabulary than customers. An opening sale, we're talking about shorting an option contract. That's where we're heading. We haven't done any of the strategies yet, but that's kind of where we're heading. Or a short position in the stock. All opening sales are used to establish or add to a short position. A short position. And then the way you get rid of that is to, buy it back to a closing purchase for either more than or less than. So if I say, which of the following is used to eliminate or reduce or offset a short position, you would say a closing purchase. By the way, that'd be no different than if this was, a stock position. But this is very much a potential answer set on both the SIE and the Series 7. All right, so we're looking at the 3 things that can happen to an option contract. We said the option contract, we're getting ready to play. We haven't played yet. We haven't done any of these 4 positions. We're just getting ready to. We've been doing the introduction to options before we actually look at the basic option positions. And we said a great mnemonic to remember what can happen to an option contract is it can be traded. That was the previous slide. We said it can be exercised. That's what we're looking at now. Or it can expire, and that's what we'll look at next. Those are the 3 events. Now, what I'm kind of hinting at is that all option questions are going to end with either the contract got traded, the contract was exercised, or the contract expired. That's how every question will end. That's the only way the option question can end. Now here, trade date is when we agree to terms. Trade date is when we agree to terms. Settlement is when ownership actually changes hands. It's when ownership changes hands. And so if I buy an option contract today, Monday, today is Monday, the 28th, it will settle tomorrow. That's when the money will either be debited or credited to my account. Debit means they're going to take it out of my account. In my Apple example, 9 points would be $900. It was 10 contracts, $9,000. If I'm selling that option, that's when it's going to be credited to my account on T+1. If Very testable to know that options are settled T+1 and government securities settled T+1. Now, the resulting exercise, if the contract gets exercised, that's going to be T+2 on the exercise. So, you know, sometimes the way you may see this on your exam is T+1, T+2. So we've been talking about an Apple 115 call or an Apple 115 put. And we said if at expiration, the contract has intrinsic value, it will be exercised. So, you know, if Apple is 117 at expiration, if Apple is 117 at expiration, now let me get a better looking. It will be exercised. Now, by the way, if you own the 115 call and you don't exercise, in your option agreement, we're going to tell you, we haven't heard from you. If you have a 115 call, why would you not want to exercise? You know, you may still be losing money, but you at least get back 2 of your, you know, your money you spent, your 9 points. So if the contract has any intrinsic value, it will be exercised. And so in this example, you're going to need money to pay for the stock, right? So if I'm your broker, you say, Dean, I want to exercise my Apple 115 call. I say, okay, you need 11.5, right? You're going to need the money to pay for the stock. Now, the person who shorted it has got to come up with the stock. And so if you got, or exercise long call, you got T+2 to come up with the money. And if you're, you know, have to deliver the stock, you got T+2. The resulting exercise is T+2. You say, well, Dean, how do I know they're going to come up with the stock? I said, well, how do they know you're going to come up with the money? Very testable, very testable. You do not have any contraparty risk. The OCC, the Options Clearing Corporation, is the issuer and guarantor of all option contracts. The OCC test question is the issuer and guarantor of all option contracts, meaning you don't have contraparty risk. You know, the risk that the other party is not going to make good. I told you one reason you might want to come to Vegas is if you make some parlay bet, then you win, you go to the gauge, you know they're going to pay you. If you're using your local bookie, who knows if you can pay. Now, if you're long a put, you're going to stick the stock to somebody. And so you got 2 days to do that. And if you're short the put, you're the puttee, you got to buy the stock. You got T+2 to come up with the money. So you either need money or stock, depending on what side of the contract you're on. So we said that we're looking at the 3 things that can happen to an option contract. We're looking at the 3 things that can happen to an option contract. We said the 3 things that can happen to an option contract is the option contract can be traded. We looked at that. The option contract can be exercised. We said the option contract can expire. There was trading, there is exercise, and now expire. Expire would be if there's no intrinsic value. So 2 styles of exercise, very testable to be able to distinguish between these 2. American style means you can exercise anytime you want. You know, don't tell anybody, don't tell anybody. But I didn't have $20,000 to buy 1,000 shares of this stock. And I knew I was going to have $20,000 to buy 1,000 shares of this stock at a future date. But I was afraid that by the time I actually came up with 20 grand, the stock would move against me. Now, what I did have in my account was a couple $1,000 that would allow me to buy the 20 calls. And so I bought 10 of the 20 calls at 2. 2 times 10 times 100, $2,000. And then when I got it, I exercised. Now, it wasn't expiration. I know that's going to shock the person. The person who's short isn't used to Dean exercising between now and expiration, because usually, you know, if I'm going to sell it, I'd sell the contract and get some time value. But for whatever reason, if I want to, in this case, I chose to exercise a month early. And I'm allowed to do that. So one of the risks you have is you know, being short an American style equity option contract is anytime somebody can make you exercise. Test question, the OCC assigns exercise notices randomly. So we are looking at a series. We were looking at a series. The complete description was an Apple December 115 call. And so when somebody exercises, the holder, the buyer, the owner, the person long exercises, the Options Clearing Corporation assigns that exercise notice randomly, meaning there's more than one broker dealer who has a customer who's short that particular contract. In Apple, there's a huge, what we call open interest, the number of, contracts outstanding. And so let's say that OCC calls Merrill, and Merrill says, why us? What does the OCC say? They say, well, it just happened to be you randomly. Now, within Merrill's client base, they probably have more than one customer who is short that particular contract. And how do they decide which one of their customers is going to have to come up with the stock or the money? The broker dealer can do it randomly. Most firms do it randomly because that's, requires less work, less paperwork. They can do it FIFO, first in, first out. The first person who wrote the contract, who is short the contract, who sold the contract, is the first person to get exercised, or another fair method. Now, remember what I told you, whenever there's three of a thing, you can, look forward to an accept format. A broker dealer can assign exercise notices on all the following ways except. And D would be something that isn't fair. It would, be discriminatory. You can't be discriminatory means you can't say, oh, there's that jerk of a customer, I'm going to get him. No. You can't say, oh, that's my good customer, man, I don't want to do it to him. No. Whatever you're doing has to be fair. By the way, you have to tell the OCC what you're doing. You have to tell your clients what you're doing. And if you go to change it, you have to tell everybody what you're doing. What we're saying there is you just can't come into work today and decide how you're going to be doing this. Now, European style test question, we said you got to be able to contrast these two. The option contract can only be exercised by the holder on the last trading day. In my analogy this morning, I gave you an example of this. I don't know if you caught it, but remember, I couldn't show up at the dealer's lot anytime and put the vehicle to him for $60,000. No. Remember, in that example, I could only stick it to him, put it to him at the end of the lease. At the end of the lease, I could then say, hey, where's my $60,000? And that is typical of non-equity options, primarily index options and foreign currencies. Now, another testable distinction about this is index options settle in cash and not physical delivery. When you're trading equity options, you have to deliver the stock. But nobody would trade with you. If I wrote a Wilshire 5000 index, and when I got exercised, that meant I had to come up with 100 shares of every stock in the Wilshire index, nobody would play. And so we say, Dean, if you're going to short an index option, you don't have to worry about delivering the stock and the underlying index. You just have to come up with the cash. And the cash is going to be T plus 1. So over here, remember, we said it's T plus 1 for the option contract and T plus 2 for exercise, and you actually have to deliver the stock or the money. And here, it's going to be T plus 1 and T plus 1 for both the option contract and the exercise. Again, that would be, how they would express that as a test to T plus 1. Remember, T means trade date when you agree to terms. 1 means settlement when the money gets debited or credited out of your account. It's when ownership changes. All right. We said there's three things that can happen. T, the option contract can be traded. The option contract can be exercised. The option contract can expire. And we said before you do your first option trade, you have to be approved. We talked about trading the option contract. We're going to talk about this. We haven't done our 4 basics yet. So we're still on the intro. And we said that we could exercise, and we said there's 2 styles of exercise. And we said the option contract can expire worthless. So if you're long the option contract or short the option contract, this is either going to be good news or bad news. So I say the Apple call, December 115 call contract expired worthless. Is that good news or bad news? You say, well, Dean, it depends. Now, if I tell you the option position, then you can tell me whether it's good news or bad news, right? So in any long option position, your maximum loss occurs when the contract expires. You lose the premium you paid. In our example of Apple, you're going to lose 9 points if you were long. And in short, you'd make 9 points. So what we mean by that is over here, anytime you are buying an option contract, the worst case is you're going to lose your premium. And over here, the best case is you're going to get to keep the premium. So that's what we're saying when we're talking about that matrix. So maximum gain, maximum loss. By the way, for you Series 7 candidates who may be, participating in that third lecture on multiple option strategies. Just for a heads up, that'd be the same, by the way, for multiple option strategies. If it's a straddle you bought or a spread you bought, that's your loss. And if it's a straddle you sold or your short a straddle or short a spread, that's your maximum gain. We said one of three things is going to happen. The contract will be traded, it will exercise, will expire. All right, so now we're ready to do our four basic positions. Again, now what we're going to do is we're kind of going to fill out our matrix and go over what you're held accountable for on your exam. And, you're held accountable for either 7 option strategies or 9 option strategies, depending on whether you are a SIE candidate or whether you're a Series 7 candidate. In this lecture, it doesn't matter because these 4 are on both exams. And we're going to go over the break even, the maximum gain, maximum loss, and bullish or bearish for these 4 basic option positions. The first one I'm going to show you is the long call. Then I'm going to show you the short call, and then I'm going to show you the long put, and I'm going to show you the short put. When I show you the position here, the first one I'm going to show you is the long call. And what I'm about to show you is that when you have a long call, your maximum gain is unlimited. So I'm just going to put that in the matrix right here. I'm going to show you that when you do this, you are bullish. And I'm going to show you that that means you want the stock to go up. And I'm going to show you that the break even, I'm about to illustrate all of this to you in just a moment. I know you're excited. For XP means strike price. And I'm going to show you the break even. By the way, once I show this to you, once I show that to you, whatever Dean shows you over here, this is going to be the opposite over here, right? And so kind of where we're heading. So by the way, if you take me up on my, suggest that maybe you want to use the options matrix, and I ask you about a long call, I said, what can you tell me about a long call? You say, Dean, when you're long the call, you've paid a premium. You have a choice to buy the stock at the strike price. You're bullish, meaning you want the stock to go up in relationship to the, break even. Your maximum gain is unlimited. Your max loss is the premium, and the break even is strike price plus premium. You may not have any clue what you just said, but it is technically correct. It is technically correct. All right, so let's look at our first one, and let me just illustrate that indeed that is correct. So let me show that to you. And so here's our first position that we're held accountable for on the exam. Long and Apple, December 115 call at 9. Now remember, the other thing we could have done here is we could have said buyer. We could have said owner. We could have said holder. Remember, the one thing they're not going to say, on your exam is choice. And so, again, I would recommend having some kind of process. And one process I would recommend to you is that every time I get one of these option legs, not testable, but that's a series or leg, is I'd say, what am I looking at? I'm looking at a choice to buy the stock at the strike price. That's what I'm looking at. And I'd get myself oriented on my matrix and say, okay, what am I looking at? Let's put this in test phraseology. Your customer goes long, one Apple, December 115 call at 9 when Apple's at 117. By the way, it doesn't matter where Apple's at when we do the trade. It matters where Apple's at when we close the trade. So it doesn't matter. Now, there's 2 roads to proceed. One way to proceed is to memorize things. Not a bad way to proceed. I mean, particularly if you're an SIE candidate. If you're an SIE candidate, they're only going to get 3-4 option questions. And so, maybe that's a conscious decision to decide you're just going to memorize stuff. Now, your Series 7 candidates, I'd warn you that if you go down the memory road, the things that you need to memorize are going to continue to pile up. And you're going to have more and more stuff. So we're on a dual track here. We're trying to get you to intellectually own options, because then you don't need to memorize anything. But if not, you need to memorize. So you can memorize call up strike price plus premium, and you can just tell me the break even is 124. Now, if you're going to memorize break evens, I would highly recommend you put an arrow to remind yourself where you want Apple to be in relationship to the break even. Now, another way I could do this is I could track the money and say, okay, well, I paid 9 points to be able to buy Apple at 115. So ultimately, the break even is the number that would make the thing balance. So for example, you could say I paid 9 points to be able to buy Apple at 115, and you could just shop your answer set and maybe say the break even they offer is 123. B offered to you as a break even is 124. C offered to you as a break even is 125. And D offered to you as a break even. Break evens, by the way, are always expressed on a per share basis. Always. And what I'm saying here is that you could, if you get good at the T, just say, okay, well, ultimately, it's the number that would make these columns balance. And so I plug that one in, that doesn't work. Let me see, I'll plug in this one. Yeah, that makes it work. Whoop. So that's one way to proceed. So you can either just memorize call up. So we said break even, we got to be able to do max gain, max loss, break even, bullish or bearish. So call up. We said that's a great mnemonic. If you only remember one thing about this lecture, call up, put down. Call up was great for intrinsic value. Call up. If the market price is up from the strike price, the contract has intrinsic value. It was also great. Now we find out for break evens as well. All right, so what's our next thing we've got to be able to do besides the break even in these transactions? The next thing we got to be able to do is the maximum gain. The maximum gain is unlimited. I remember I can either trade this option or I can exercise it. If I exercise the option contract, I'm going to be out 124 for the Apple. And what could the Apple be? It has unlimited gain potential. I mean, a long call sounds pretty good. How with as little as $900? That's 9 points on one contract governing 100 shares. Again, I recommend you do things on a per share basis, but how with as little as $900 would you like to control thousands of dollars of Apple stock? That sounds pretty decent. How with limited loss would you like unlimited reward? That sounds pretty decent. Let's say that Apple, I'm just grabbing my calculator here. There's no sense missing question because of arithmetic. My arithmetic is suspect. So let's just make up a test question and put some numbers in this thing. Your customer goes long, one Apple, December 115, call 9, when Apple's at 117. Who cares? At expiration, now we care. Remember, we said if you're going to make some money here, you've got to be right about three things. It's, got to get the trifecta. That's why most people don't make money in options, but you got to be right about direction. You're choosing up. You got to be right about how far, up or down, in this case up, and then you got to be right about the timing. That's why it's incredibly difficult, to make money in option. But boy, if you get all three of those things right, woohoo! It's kind of like, again, like the trifecta in a horse race. All right, so your customer goes long, one Apple, December 115, call 9, when Apple's at 117. At expiration, Apple is at 133. Apple is at 133. I just made that up. So now I'm telling you the current market price of Apple at expiration is 133. So if at expiration Apple is 133, is this customer going to exercise the 115 call contract? Absolutely. Remember, even if he doesn't, we're going to do it for him. And then he sells the Apple. So your customer exercises his call contract and he sells the Apple. Yeah. Oh, by the way, you need to make your own tea. I don't know if I brought that up, but I like to use dollars out versus dollars in, but some people like to use minus signs or plus signs, whatever floats your boat. But, if you get good at contract specifications, you're not fumbling around that this is a choice to buy Apple at 115. If you're not fumbling around with that and you can track money, you're going to get 100 on options. You're going to say, boy, give me, 125 option questions. Anyways, could it have been better? Yeah. How much better could it have been? Well, there's finite supply of Apple, potential infinite demand. So if you get this right, woohoo. Let's try some different phraseology. So before I do, let's just go back to the phraseology that I used to set this up. So the phraseology I used to set this up was your customer goes long, one Apple, December 115, call it 9, when Apple's 117. I said at expiration, Apple's 133. And he exercises his contract. That means he bought the stock at 115 and he sells the stock at 133. And then I'm just subtotaling his columns and say, okay, well, I was out 124. I brought in 133. I made 9 points. But a different phraseology, that was exercise. Remember, the other thing that could happen is the contract can be traded. Remember, here we did an opening purchase. So intellectually, this is the same question, different phraseology. Your customer goes long, one Apple, December 115, call it 9, when Apple's 117. At expiration, several weeks later, with Apple at 133, he closes out at intrinsic value. He closes out or offsets at intrinsic value. Now, in the real world, he would have had some time value as well. But in the test phraseology, you close out at intrinsic value. That's why I told you that was important, because otherwise you won't know how to close this thing out. And so that's why that was important. P.S. Note that he doubled his money. And the reason he doubled his money is because he was right about all three things. He was right about direction, up. He was right about how far up. He said at least 9 points up from 115. He was right about, timing. Ooh. By the way, the guy who bought the Apple stock at 115 made 18 points, but he put up, 11.5. That's a good return, but it's not nearly this. That's a double. So, another reason people buy options is leverage. Making a little money, do a lot. Now, I would warn you, the same supercharged speed you make money with trading options is the same supercharged speed you're going to lose money trading options. Maximum gain is unlimited. All right, we said the last thing we got to be able to do is we got to know our max loss. Our max loss is when the contract expires worthless. 115 or lower, the contract expires and you lose 9 points on one contract each. By the way, on the test, they wouldn't offer you 9 points or $900. It'd be one or the other. And again, just from a mechanic standpoint, a process, I wouldn't put 900 there. I highly recommend you do things on a per share basis. Then when you're all done, figure out how many contracts or shares. That way you're less likely to transpose, zeros. So that would be my recommendation to you. Some people are visual people. And so here's a visual representation of this. Here is a visual representation of this. Let me just get my annotation here, tool ready to roll. And so anywhere below here, the contract has no intrinsic value, and the contract expires. Now, if I really wanted to teach you options, I'd make you buy one. Once you're out of pocket, you figured out you got to cover your out-of-pocket costs. So you're out of pocket 9 points. So you got to at least get past that. So there's our break even of 124. So anywhere below that, we're not going to be happy. But once we get past that, then we start to make some money. So there's a visual representation of that. And so we said what you want is the stock to go above that. You are a bull. So once you get past 124, you start to make money. All right, well, we said every contract has two parties. And so now we're going to look at the other side of this. By the way, same break even for both parties, just a matter of where they want it in relationship to that. All right, so let's go now to our second transaction we're held accountable for. Trading, we talked about trading the option contract. So we said, you know, you can do an opening purchase. Now we're going to be looking at an opening sale. We're going to be looking at a short position. P.S. Before I show you the short position, let's go back to our matrix, and I'm going to fill this in now. So we're going to be looking at the second position here. And we're going to find out, ooh, test question. This is very much a test question. We're going to find out that the maximum loss is unlimited. I can't imagine any draw at which you don't get asked about that. You know, we're going to find out here. By the way, it's the opposite. Whatever we put over here, whatever we put over here, the opposite goes over there. We're going to find out that you're bearish. You know, selling the stock is ultimately a bearish transaction, meaning you want the stock to go down. And let's put a little arrow there. And the same break even for both parties. So let's put that in there. Our break even is going to be strike price plus premium. And so we'll get that in there. So I say, what can you tell me about a short call? You say, when I'm short a call, I've received the premium. I have an obligation to sell the stock at the strike price. I'm bearish. My maximum gain is the premium. Max loss is unlimited. My break even is strike price plus premium. You know, if I come in your office and say, I want to lose so much money that you in advance can't tell me how much. You say, well, Dean, if you agree to sell stock you don't own, that will certainly do the trick. And so now let's look at our second position. We're doing our 4 here. So here's our next one. So again, I would orient myself on my matrix. So, you know, in terms of orient myself on my matrix, I'd say, okay, I'm over here on my matrix. And I told you I like to below whatever I'm looking at. You know, right, what am I looking at in English? What I'm looking at in English is an obligation. That's what that word means. An obligation to sell the stock at the strike price, XP. So in terms of my process, I like to get oriented on the matrix. I like to kind of, you know, my official scratch paper, put what am I looking at? Same break even call up, strike price plus premium. We said you can either just memorize this. We said that's one way to go. If you're going to memorize the break even, I'd always put a little arrow next to it to remind yourself of where you want it to be in relationship to that. But we said the other way you can go is you can track the money in and out of the account by making a T. I like to use dollars out, dollars in, but some people like to use pluses or minuses, and some people like to use debit or credit, you know, whatever floats your boat. And so I like to say, okay, well, I brought in 9 points. And for that 9 points, I'd said I'd sell the Apple for 115. So again, I'm illustrating break even, by the way, is the number that makes the columns balance. You know, we said in these call contracts, you know, what the bet is about upward volatility. We said the long call, the person is buying directional volatility, upward movement. And that's what the short seller is selling. That's not testable. That's just intellectually what's going on. And so, you know, even if I'm wrong, it moves against me. I got a little bit of a cushion here. I'm just going to illustrate that indeed, if I go in the open market and buy the Apple at 124 and deliver at 115, which I'm obliged to do, I would break even. Nobody does things to break even. People do things to make money. Again, I would warn you, I think this is a mental mess. Put all these zeros in here. I would highly recommend you do things on a per share basis. And then when you're all done, figure out what that is. So break even test question is 124. Maximum gain. Maximum gain, I think, is pretty straightforward when you sell an option contract. The maximum gain, whoops, sorry about that. Get to see my mug. I don't want you to see that. No, I'm kidding. The next test question is maximum gain. Maximum gain is when the contract expires and you get to keep the 9 points. 9 points or 9 points on one contract covering 100 shares, which is $900. Now, on your exam, they won't give you a choice between 9 points or $900. I suggest you do it on a per share basis. And then the next test question is, boy, I don't have any draw in which you're going to not be asked that. In fact, let's just take a little time here and put a text box here to remind you what the test issue is. For both of you candidates, what you've got to be able to do is contrast an uncovered call or naked call. If you're naked outside the privacy of your own home, are good things or bad things likely to happen? Bad things. An uncovered call or naked call with a covered call. That's our, we'll do covered calls in our second lecture in the series, but, an uncovered call or naked call is when you agree to sell stock you don't own. In a covered call is when you agree sell stock you don't own. Or you do, excuse me, you do own. And that does not have every once in a while I'm teaching always well, if you shouldn't do it, why is it on the test? Because so you can tell somebody not to do it. I mean, our long call sounded pretty good. How with limited risk would you like unlimited reward? This one sounds kind of foolish. How would limited reward would you like unlimited risk? That's not so good, right? I mean, it's like picking up nickels in front of a bulldozer. In terms of our thing here, remember we said 133 was a dreamy price for the guy who's long, but here it's going to be bad because that means I'm going to have to go and buy the stock at 133 and deliver it at 115. So once it goes past my break even, I start hemorrhaging money. By the way, could it have been worse? Could it have been worse? Absolutely. Apple could be, 150. I have to go out and buy it at 150, deliver at 115. So that's the most I'm bringing into my account, and what I might have to pay out. Ooh, who knows? I mean, unlimited loss potential. Now, there's ways to take that money without taking all that risk, by the way. You can do a credit call spread or a covered call. The main point is an exam question is don't do this. It subjects you to unlimited risk potential. All right, so let's look at, again, a visual representation of that. And so here is a visual representation of this. By the way, remember, it's the same break even for both parties. So here you've got a little bit of a cushion. You brought in 9 points. So even if the apple moves against you, as long as it doesn't go above 124, you're okay. And so what we're saying here is you're bearish, meaning you want it to be down from that. Ideally, you'd want the apple to be 115 or lower, so the contract has no intrinsic value. But once it goes past 124, ooh, now you got all kinds of problems. Every once in a while, somebody will say, well, Dean, it's not unlimited. It's not infinite. It's infinite less 9. Well, infinite less 9 is still unlimited. The point is, as your broker, I can't tell you how bad this is going to get. So this is just very, very foolish. As I mentioned, there's a lot of smarter things you can do. In the second lecture, we could do a covered call. In the third lecture, we could do a credit call spread. So there's ways to take that money, but this isn't the way to do it. This is, penny wise and very pound foolish, so to speak. All right, so we're now in our third option position. And again, let's go fill out our matrix. And we're going to find out here, this is what I'm about to show you. That the maximum gain is going to be when the stock goes from the break even. Let me get a bigger font. Goes from the break even to 0, or strike price less premium to 0. I'm going to show you that the break even, if you only remember one thing about our time together, call up, put down, I'm going to show you that the break even is going to be strike price less premium. Same break even whether you're long or short. I'm going to show you that you are bearish, meaning you want the stock to go down. And again, if you memorize your matrix and I ask you about a long put, you say, Dean, when you're long a put, you've paid a premium, you have a choice to sell the stock, you are bearish, your break even is strike price less premium, your max gain is break even to 0, your max loss is the premium. You may not have any clue what you just said, but it's technically correct. So I've shown you this, I've shown you that, and now I'm about to show you the third of the fourths that you're held accountable for. All right, so let's clean up this line. If you only remember one thing about this lecture, call up, put down, call up, put down. So you just memorize break evens. It's strike price less premium, 106. If you're going to memorize break evens, I would put an arrow to remind yourself where you want Apple to be in relationship to that break even. Anywhere below 106, you're a winner. By the way, on your exam, that could give you a 50-50 if they start showing you prices. So we said you could just simply remember call up, put down. If you remember one thing about this lecture, that's what to remember. Now we said another way to proceed is, I, by the way, would get myself oriented on my matrix. And I told you I like to put below whatever I'm looking at what it is in English. And this is a choice. By the way, the puts are the ones that throw people for a loop. This is a choice to sell the stock at the strike price. And so whether you want to have a choice to sell the stock or a choice to buy the stock, choices cost money. And we said another way you could do this is track the money. I paid 9 points to be able to stick the stock to somebody, in this case Apple, at 115. This is the most common thing that people get hung up on. It's okay. Somebody says, Dean, I don't get it. I buy it to sell it. When you buy a put contract, dollars out, you have a choice to sell the stock at the strike price, dollars in. And remember, break even is ultimately the number that would make the columns balance. To have a break even, we got to have two numbers. That's what break even is. Same dollars out as dollars in. And so now I'm just illustrating that indeed, if we buy the Apple at 106 and we stick it to somebody 115, we'd make 9 points. We paid 9 points, we break even. Nobody does things to break even. People do things to make money, but test question, the break even is 106. Now, remember, you're trying to make money. And we said, if you're going to make money, nobody does things to break even. We said, you got to be right about 3 things. And the 3 things we said you got to be right about, the thing you got to be right about is direction. Here you're choosing down. You got to be right about how far down, because you got to cover your out-of-pocket cost. And you got to be right about the timing. You're saying all this is going to take place between now and the third Friday in December. And so when you put it here, we paid 9 points. And we can stick Apple to somebody at 115. And so let's just look at it. Anywhere below my break even of 109, I'm going to make money. So break even to 0 or break even or strike price less premium, however you want to think about it. Let's say that Apple, our break even, we said, let's just go back to our break even here. Our break even was 115 minus 9. Cover our out-of-pocket cost 106. So anywhere below 106, we're going to lose money or make money. So let's say Apple is 97. That would be great. I'll buy the Apple in the open market at 97, and I'll stick it to somebody at 115. So anywhere below my break even, I start to make money. So if 97 is good, 80 would be better. Right? What would be ideal is Apple goes bankrupt and I can make somebody give me 115 for worthless stock. So the best case scenario is the Apple goes all the way from 115 to 0. If I buy the Apple for 1, that'd be good. 10 points, 115. So, a lot of ways to say that. 106, 10,600, break even to 0, strike price less premium to 0. By the way, we know the best case scenario where bearish is that Apple goes all the way to 0. Max loss is the premium. The worst case is Apple is 115 or higher and the contract expires worthless. By the way, this sounds bad, but this is good. If you buy a put as a bear and you're wrong, you just lose your premium. Another way to be bearish on Apple is to short the stock, and that would be really foolish. I can't tell you how many people who were short Tesla wish they would have bought a put instead, because if you buy a put and you're wrong, you just lose your premium. It sounds like a bad thing, but that's actually a good thing. It has less risk than the underlying stock position. So another reason people buy options is if you're wrong, you have less loss potential than you have on the underlying stock. Let's just do another one of these in terms of test phraseology. So your customer goes long, one Apple, December 115, call it 9. When Apple is 117, who cares? At expiration, Apple is 97. Your customer buys the stock at 97 and exercises his put. Exercise a put, his choice to sell 115. What is your customer's gain or loss? And you just simply net those numbers, right? Which in this case is 9 points. Let's do different phraseology. Remember the other phraseology we use? Your customer goes long, one Apple, December 115, put at 9. Again, I'm hoping that at some point in terms of process that you write underneath what that is. It's a choice to sell Apple at 115. And if you've got a T going, you put your 9 there. Your customer goes long, one Apple, December 115 call at 9 when Apple's 117. Who cares? Remember this phraseology? Several weeks later, with Apple at 97, that's not what I like to do in terms of my mechanics. He offsets or trades or does a closing sale for intrinsic value. The intrinsic value of a 115 put with the stock at 97 is 18 points. Please note, we said you can trade the option. The option can be exercised or it can expire. So here you doubled your money. You did your opening purchase for 9. You did your closing sale for 18. and you got to double. Now, in the real world, you'd have time value too. But as I mentioned in test phraseology, they'd like to say you closed it out at intrinsic value. Intrinsic value. So again, if you get your memorize only one thing, call up, put down. And again, here, you got to cover your out-of-pocket costs. I joke, if I really wanted to teach you options, I'd make you buy one. And once you were out of pocket, you'd figure out pretty quickly how this works. So you got to cover your out-of-pocket cost, which in this case is 9 points. Remember, you said Apple was going to go down. You said it's at least going down. By the way, that represents the strike price. Nobody does things break even, but once it goes past that, then you start to make some money. All the way to 0. So again, I told you there's several ways to think of this. You're bearish. We said a couple ways to think about this is your max gain takes place when it goes from the strike price minus the premium 106 to 0, or break even to 0, or break even. That's your maximum gain potential because you're a bear. Bear's attack, pause down. Bear means you want the stock to go down. Bull's attack, horns up means you want the stock to go up. Remember, it's going to be the same break even over here. Just a matter where you want it, right? So if you only remember one thing, call up, put down. All right, the last thing we got to talk about in this lecture, the last thing is our fourth strategy you're held accountable for on your exam. And that's a short put. If we're going to have put-ers, we got to have put-es. And so this is our last one. And again, before I show you that one, let's go back to our matrix and fill that in. So here's our matrix, and we're going to show you this last fourth position here. By the way, whatever we put in the long put box, the opposite goes over in the other box, right? So let's get a different color here. And we're going to find out. Let's put that there. We're going to find out same break-even. You only remember one thing about our time together. Call up, put down same break-even. Just a matter where you want it in relationship to that. So strike price less premium. We're going to find out the maximum loss. We already got the max gain, but we'll show that to you. It's the premium max loss is going to be when the stock goes from the break-even to 0. We're going to find out that we are bullish because you have a choice to buy the stock. Let's put that in here. So again, if you take a sheet of paper, here's my paper. I come in the exam site. I get 2 sheets of official scratch paper. If you're going to do a data dump, I would certainly have my matrix on there. I got calls and puts. I can either buy or sell them. So I have 4 basic option positions, the options matrix. And we're looking at the 4 positions in this lecture. And we said those 4 positions are boom, boom, boom. And now we're showing you this one. This is the last position in this lecture on basic options. I say, what can you tell me about a short put? You say, Dean, when you're short a put, you receive the premium. You're obligated to buy the stock at the strike price. Your maximum gain is the premium. Your max loss is break even to 0. You are a bull, and the break even is strike price less premium. You may not have any clue what you just said, but it is technically correct. It is technically correct. All right, so let's go now and show you this last position in this first of 3 lectures. So there we go. Again, what I would recommend perhaps is to orient yourself on your matrix as a process. By the way, you can use any process you want. So, don't get hung up on the means, or just a method to the ends, which is getting right answers on the exam. I had a candidate, the candidate told me he had his own method. I said, that's great. I mean, everybody has a different method. I would tell you my method has resulted in many, many people passing their exam with, when we gave scores, very high scores in the options category. They don't give you scores any longer, but so, but anyways, this candidate's strategy wasn't yielding right answers. I said, well, then that process does not work. So, Be careful when you ask somebody for help too. Again, they don't take you backwards. But I told you, I like to orient myself on my matrix. And then what I like to do is underneath the contract, underneath the leg or series, say, what am I looking at? The short, remember, I could say seller, I could say writer. But the biggest thing to get to is that that's an obligation. You're a potential victim. You have an obligation to buy the stock at the strike price. So I like to kind of put that under there, particularly in the puts. XP means strike price. And we said you're going to memorize break evens, which isn't a bad idea. If you're going to memorize break evens, all you got to remember is call up and put down. I would put an arrow to remind yourself where you want the stock in relationship to that break even. If I'm short a put, I want the Apple to be above 106. And that alone could get you a 50-50 answer on your test. So, one way to do is memorize break-ins. If you only remember one thing about our time together, call up, put down, call up, put down, strike price, less premium. And then I like to actually get my T fired up, and I like to track the money and say, okay, I said for 9 points that I would buy the Apple at 115. And so again, we said another way you could proceed if you get good at a T is get this is called the setup. I call that the setup. And then shop the answer set. They're going to offer you 4 answers as potential break-evens. Now, maybe choice A says the break-even is 106. And so you can literally just go through there and plug in the numbers offered to you until you get one that makes the columns balance. I say, oh, yeah, that works. That makes the columns balance. If I buy the stock at 115, which I'm obliged to do, and I sell it at 106, I lose 9 points. I got 9 points. By the way, this is the one that most people get hung up on. It's okay. It's okay to get hung up. It's not a big deal to get hung up. But when you sell a put contract, dollars in, you agreed to buy the stock, dollars out. People say, I don't get it. I buy it to sell it. You sell it to buy it. Those are different. When you sell a put contract, dollars in, you've agreed to buy the stock, dollars out. As we said, nobody does things to break even. Nobody does things to break even. People do things to make money. And so the best case scenario is the contract expires. And you get to keep the money. So 9 points on, and again, as I told you on the test, they wouldn't give you both. By the way, any strategy that Mr. Buffett is a fan of is probably not a bad strategy. If I'm your registered option principal, I say, why does your client want to sell puts or go short puts? Remember, the other thing we could say here is seller. We could say writer. So, whatever you're not prepared for. What this is an obligation to buy the stock at the strike price. An obligation to buy the stock at the strike price. So Mr. Buffett says, why not get paid to do something you're already prepared to do? I mean, if I'm already prepared to buy Apple at 115 and somebody will give me $900 to do something, I'll say, well, thank you very much. And then if you stick the Apple to me, you put the Apple to me, I say, thank you very much. I wanted the Apple anyways. For example, even if Apple's 110, let's just clear this up here. I'm just setting this back up. So even if Apple's 110, somebody sticks it to me at 115, which I'm obliged to do, and the Apple's 110. So I lose 5 points on the stock, right? The difference between those two numbers. But I'm still a winner. I still got more money in than out. And maybe I wanted the Apple anyways. So, selling puts is a way to get the stock potentially at less than the market price. So, Mr. Buffett says, yeah, I want to buy the stock anyways. Why not get paid to do something you're already prepared to do? So your ROP, I said, what does the guy want to do? He says, Dean, he wants to be approved to write puts or short puts on stocks he's willing to own. He wants to short puts as an alternative to a buy limit order. Another way to get stocks at less than the current market price is to give me an order to buy Apple today at 114 or less. And I said, well, if you're willing to buy Apple at 114, Apple's at 117. One other thing you might want to consider is getting approved to short the puts. So we said, again, trading the option contract, we said you can do a closing transaction here if you chose to. And so when you can trade the contract. And so you would do a closing sale. You close it out at intrinsic value. So maximum loss is when somebody makes you buy the Apple for 115 and the Apple is worthless. So when the stock goes from the break even 106 all the way to zero, that is your maximum loss. So $106 a share or 10,600, right? Because we're talking about 100 shares. Somebody makes you pay 115 for the Apple. It's worthless. You get to keep the 9. Those are the difference. Some people are visual people. Some people are visual people. And so if you're a visual person, it's the same break even again, call up, put down, call up, put down. But here we are over here on this side now. You said, I think you're going to be wrong. I don't think Apple is going down. I think Apple is going up. In fact, ideally, I'd want the Apple to be 115 or higher. That means there'd be a ceiling. There'd be no intrinsic value. That'd be ideal. And so this is a bullish, or excuse me, I got to fix the slide that says bearish. This is a bullish transaction. We want the stock to be up. If we're wrong, the stock doesn't go up. The Apple goes to zero and somebody makes me pay 115 for the worthless stock. All right, so that's our last of our 4 basic option positions. And here is the matrix in all its glory. Here is the matrix in all its glory. Boom. There is a beautiful looking matrix. Wow. Maybe you want to take a screenshot of that. Remember, it's not a box with 4 squares. No. Not a box with 4 squares. Every one of these quadrants is somehow related to another quadrant. So in this lecture, I showed you each of these positions. Right, and those are the 4 basic option positions you're held accountable for on the SIE exam and the Series 7 top-off exam. So I hope you found this lecture helpful. I will be posting this lecture to my YouTube channel. If you are watching this on the YouTube channel, please give me some feedback on the dry erase, whether you would rather have a dry erase board and have Dean moving around and putting stuff on a dry erase board rather than, a slide deck, because I'm giving some thought. For now, the first couple YouTube channel postings will be a slide deck. What else? Previews of coming attractions. So we said the second lecture in this series is stock positions plus an option position and full and partial hedges. And again, that'd be appropriate for SIE and Series 7. In the second lecture, I'm going to show you a long stock and short call, a covered call or buy right, where we're generating additional income. By the way, those are the vast majority of your test questions on the basics and a covered call. And then I'm going to show you in that second lecture how to protect a long stock position with a protective put, how to marry a put to that long stock position. And then I'm going to show you, the last thing I'm going to show you in that lecture is how to turn a short stock position from unlimited risk into limited risk. That's a nifty arrow to have in your quiver. And then I'm going to tell you now how to not be foolish. In other words, I'm going to show you that if you short the stock and short a put, you still have unlimited risk. I don't call that 8. I just call that not being smart. And so anyways, that would be the second lecture, and that too would be appropriate for both candidates. And then if you're a Series 7 top-off candidate, this is unique for you. You're not held accountable for multiple option strategies as an SIE candidate, but you certainly are in Series 7. So I'd show you straddles, what you got to be able to do on your exam in a straddle Series 7s or potential Series 7s is identify a straddle, calculate the break-evens, determine where it's profitable, when do you use it. And we cover that in that third and last lecture. And spreads, you got to be able to determine, identify the spread, determine debit or credit, exercise or expire, widen or narrow, max gain, max loss, break even, bullish or bearish, and that's what we show you in that. So anyways, I hope you found this lecture helpful. My email is also there at the bottom of the slide. If you want to send me an email or if you need to contact me. All right, well, thank you very much. And that concludes this lecture. And so I will be posting this to YouTube. And second lecture, I don't know when I'll post that. I'll see how the reviews go in this first one.